Hey, what's up everybody? This is Chris Sheldon with A&R Supply in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm just shooting another video for you today. Today's subject is going to be the Prochem chemical pump. You'll see this on a lot of Prochem truck mounts, obviously, that use last step chemical injection. You'll also see this pump or a similar style pump on many other truck mounts out there in the industry. I get a lot of calls from customers who try to repair their own pump or take it apart and try to see what's wrong with it, and then they can't get it back together properly. These aren't really difficult to rebuild, but there's lots of parts in here that have to go back a certain way. They have to go back in facing a certain direction or the pump's not going to work. So hopefully tonight we'll put it on record and you'll see how everything comes out and how everything goes back together, and then hopefully you can reference this video in the future and it'll help you do some repairs on your chemical pump. So stay tuned, we'll be right back and we'll get into the pump. Hey everybody, I'm back. We've got the chemical pump out here, and I always like to put it into a vise. It's much easier to work on when it's mounted into a vise. I know you don't always have that luxury, especially if you're out in the field trying to do some work, but yeah, vise is definitely the way to go for these. So the first thing you want to check on these chemical pumps, and the thing that in my experience goes wrong the most and causes the most problem with chemical systems, we'll see inside of the body here. So you can see usually it's not this loose on pumps that have been in use for a while. These can be really tight and really difficult to get off. One of the tricks I use to get these chemical bodies off, if they're really tight, I'll spray some WD-40 around it and I'll tap it with a hammer all the way around, and I'll just keep tapping it and tapping it a little harder than what I'm doing, but just keep tapping it around, and that vibration sometimes will help the WD-40 get inside of the threads, making it a lot easier to get this pump body apart. So just a trick that I've picked up over the years that you can definitely try. So once it's loose, we can take it off, and inside of the pump we have a diaphragm. You can see it there. It's got a little shoulder on it, you can see. So this is one of those parts I was talking about, that it has to go back into the pump in the right direction or it's not going to work. You're not going to be able to get the pump back together properly. So what you want to look for on these diaphragms when you're inspecting your pump is make sure there's no holes in this diaphragm. Make sure the diaphragm's in good shape. If it looks really beat up, you'll probably want to go ahead and replace this diaphragm, because that's might not be causing all of your problems, but it's probably causing at least some of your chemical problems. So unless this diaphragm looks really good, and there's no holes or no gouges in it, then you'll probably want to replace it. And this is a good maintenance item to just replace it every so often, just so you replace it before it actually becomes a problem for you. So the diaphragm is very important. For your diaphragm to be in good shape is very important. And like I said, this is what causes probably 90% of the chemical feed issues that I see out there in the field. So diaphragm, very important. The next part behind that diaphragm, and I think I'll just take the pump out and turn it upside down, is the actual disc. And again, this sits inside of the chemical body, and it fits underneath of the diaphragm. When you replace the diaphragm, you ought to go ahead and just replace the disc as well. You're already in the pump. You might as well just go ahead and replace them both as an assembly, because you don't want to have to go back later if your disc is worn out and causing you problems. So just replace both of these at the same time. Makes life a lot easier. So when you go to put this disc back, you're going to see there's a cutout section in here. It's like an X or a plus sign. This part where it's cut out, that plus sign or X, however you want to look at it, has to face down inside of the chemical body. And I'm going to take this out just to give you a better view. So the cutout section of the diaphragm has to go down inside facing the chemical body. If you have it upside down, it definitely will cause you problems. I know from experience. And then sometimes, let me take it back out. Sometimes when your diaphragm has been really eaten away from chemical and just from a lot of use, sometimes you'll get a lot of the black rubber from the diaphragm that's all of inside of this housing. So you want to go ahead and make sure you clean the body out really, really good and just get all of that excess rubber out of there. So we'll put this back in the vise. And again, the disc, the cross or the X, it goes down facing the main part of the body. And then when we put the diaphragm back in, we have that shoulder, and that shoulder sits just on top of the body. And it kind of makes sense because it can't go back the other way anyway. But just make sure the shoulder is facing down. And then you just press it in. And then we can just put this back on. And this doesn't have to be terribly tight. Just get it snug. And usually I don't Teflon tape the threads on this body. Usually you don't have to. Don't think it would hurt anything, and you just want to get this basically snug. You can take a pair of channel locks or something and maybe just give it a little bump if you want it a little bit tighter. But like I said earlier, it can be a problem after this pump's been on the machine a while. You could have a real difficult time taking this back off. So you don't want to tighten it too tight, just enough to where it's not going to leak or it's not going to pull air or what have you. So that's all we can do really on the bottom of the pump. And like I said, that most of your problems are down inside of here with the diaphragm and the disc. So if we turn the pump over, you're going to see that there is a flow arrow right there. So basically on this end of the pump, that's where basically it's drawing from your chemical jug, your 5-gallon head pack, or however you want to call it. That's where it's pulling through, and then it's pressurized on this side, and on this side is where it's injected into your pressure stream. And I'm telling you that because there's 2 check valves in here, and they have to be facing the proper way for this pump to work the way it's supposed to work. So we'll put it back in the vise. And we'll take the check valve housings out. And when you're rebuilding the pump, what you'll see on the cap here, there's an O-ring right there. And again, if it's old, if it's been on the machine a while, this O-ring could be eaten away. It could be leaking while you're running it. So definitely want to pay attention to this O-ring and go ahead and replace it if it looks bad or if your pump has been leaking for there. And usually I just use a little pick hook, and that's how I just peel these O-rings off. This is a new pump, so I don't want to get too aggressive on it, but you get the idea. So you just take the O-ring off, and when you replace it, it's always a good idea to clean the groove that the O-ring sits in, just so the O-ring has a nice place to seat itself. So, and then it just goes back on opposite of the way it came off. And then a little grease, a little lithium grease or silicone grease you can put on the O-ring, and that'll help it seat inside the body when you put everything back together. The next thing we'll look at is the check valve. So when you're taking it apart, just make sure that you remember which way the check valve came out. I always use my phone and I take pictures if I'm not sure of how I'm going to put something back together. So just make sure you take note of how the check valves come out. So this is the outgoing check valve, or the discharge check valve. And the way I test these is you just look inside first. I just kind of push down, make sure there's good tension on the spring. I make sure that the tappet comes back and it sits on the seat and that it doesn't catch on the valve body. And then you can take the valve apart. I'm not going to take it apart, but you want to look at that seat in there. I'll put it a little closer and just make sure that is not pitted. Make sure it's not seriously discolored. or they'll just look excessively worn sometimes. If that's the case, go ahead and replace your check valves. I'll take this out, and you'll also see there's another O-ring on this side inside of the body, and that helps seal the check valve in the chemical pump body. And same way, I use these pick hooks all the time. You can dig it in there and just fish that O-ring out, and it's a piece of cake. And then of course, reassembling it will just be basically the opposite of the disassembly. And you push the check valve in there, you can feel it kind of catch. It'll sit inside of that O-ring. It's a positive locking seating motion there that you can feel. And then you just tighten the cap back down. Put it back in the vise here. And again, these check valve housings don't have to be seriously tight. Just get them snug, because the O-ring does most of the sealing in this application. So just get it snug, and that works. So we'll flip the pump around. Yeah, it's still hand tight. Yeah, it's not this easy in real life, but since I'm doing a video, I loosened everything up first. So you'll see there's a difference on this side. The check valve is facing the opposite way that this check valve was facing, or it was in the same direction. But it sits in the cap opposite, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So we'll pull the check valve out. Again, use the pick hook. These are very handy. Okay, so we got the valve out. And instead of like the other side, the O-ring was inside of the pump body, the O-ring on this side, on the intake side, is inside of the cap. And again, you can just use your pick hook, take this O-ring out to replace it. And remember, it's always good to clean. Clean, clean, clean. So clean the cap out and then install your new O-ring. And then again, the check valve, it's going to sit positively inside of the O-ring, and you should feel it kind of seat when you push it in. So it'll be pretty secure in there. So, and then when you have these check valve housings out, it's a good idea to clean out both sides of the pump, or if you have it all the way apart, just run it under some warm water under your tap, and just get any excess debris or any excess junk that came off of your old diaphragm that maybe broke away and got inside of the rest of the pump. So just clean it up real good when you have everything apart, and you should be good to go. And again, same on this side, it doesn't have to be super tight. That O-ring does the sealing on this, so not a problem. So you just basically get it snug. And that's basically it on these pumps. They're really a piece of cake to repair and to rebuild. And I always recommend when you take this off of the machine to do anything, just go ahead and replace everything on it. Replace the diaphragm, the disc, the check valves, the O-rings, and then you don't have to mess with it for hopefully quite a while later. So I hope this video has been beneficial. You got to look inside this Prochem chemical pump, and I hope it'll help you sometime in the future. If not, if you have more questions, feel free to call us at 505-872-9702, or you can email me at Chris, C-H-R-I-S, at arsupplyco.com, and also check out our website at www.arsupplyco.com. Look forward to seeing you in the next video. Happy cleaning.